Before we begin, let me be absolutely clear about one thing. If you do not watch this video until the end, you will not fully understand what has just changed in the world, because what happened over the last 72 hours is not a headline event. It is a structural break. Today, I am not speaking from a studio or reacting to daily news. Mentally, I am in one of those closed briefing rooms where strategists do not speak for the public, but for reality. And what is being acknowledged there is deeply unsettling. The unipolar world order has quietly ended. For more than 70 years, the global system rested on a single assumption: the absolute military, technological, and financial superiority of the United States. That assumption underpinned NATO, global security guarantees, the dominance of the dollar, and the rules of international behavior. That pillar has now been seriously damaged. Russia did not simply launch a missile. It delivered a message to the entire system. The Oreshnik strike was not about destruction. It was about credibility. And in geopolitics, credibility matters more than firepower. When credibility collapses, systems begin to fail. Let's be precise. A hypersonic weapon capable of evading existing missile defenses, striking targets within minutes, and rendering decades of planning obsolete does not just change warfare. It changes incentives, and incentives shape economics, politics, and behavior. This is the part many people miss. NATO did not react with concern because of the explosion itself. It reacted because its foundational doctrine was called into question. Trillions of dollars invested in missile shields, advanced bases, carrier groups, and deterrence frameworks suddenly looked inadequate. And when military doctrines collapse, markets pay attention. Power is financed. Power is ensured by trust, and trust is the invisible foundation of both currencies and alliances. The United States remains an extraordinarily powerful nation. That is not in question. But great powers do not fail when they are weak. They fail when their assumptions stop matching reality. This moment represents exactly that kind of mismatch. For decades, American dominance rested on two pillars: military reach and financial supremacy. Today, both are under pressure at the same time. That combination is historically rare and extremely dangerous. Sanctions, once seen as a decisive weapon, are now producing unintended consequences. Instead of enforcing compliance, they are accelerating fragmentation. Alternative trade routes, alternative payment systems, alternative energy arrangements, not ideology, survival. And survival always overrides rules. Here is where the economic dimension becomes unavoidable. You cannot sustain global leadership indefinitely through debt, financialization, and speculative growth while neglecting productive capacity. Eventually, the gap between paper power and real capability becomes visible. Russia's approach highlights this contrast. While Western economies focused on financial engineering, asset inflation, and short-term returns, Russia concentrated on energy, defense, and applied science. Not perfectly, not without cost, but with clarity. This difference is not moral, it is structural. While Wall Street engineered derivatives, Russian engineers built functioning hypersonic systems. While Silicon Valley optimized attention algorithms, Russia optimized delivery platforms that redefine military strategy. This is not about admiration, it is about recognition, and recognition is spreading beyond Washington and Brussels. The global South is watching carefully. Countries that were told for decades that there was no alternative to the existing order are seeing something new, proof that the system is no longer uncontested. That realization alone reshapes global behavior. Putin is not speaking only to NATO. He is speaking to Asia, Africa, and Latin America. He is demonstrating that power is once again multipolar, whether the existing order accepts it or not. But let me be very clear about something important. This does not mean Russia has won. It means the system has lost stability. And when stability disappears, everyone pays a price. Global markets do not collapse overnight. They erode, prices rise, volatility becomes normal, uncertainty replaces confidence, and societies feel that shift long before leaders admit it. This is the most dangerous phase, not panic, but denial. We are entering an era where efficiency gives way to resilience, where geopolitical decisions outweigh economic logic, where markets react not to data, but to power. And there is no return to the previous world. not to guaranteed security, not to unquestioned dominance, not to the illusion of permanent stability. The Oreshnik moment did not start this transition. It revealed it. What comes next will not be defined by a single war or treaty. It will be defined by adaptation, by who understands that cycles have turned and systems must adjust. History shows this clearly. Every major order ends not with an announcement, but with a series of moments that force people to rethink what they believed was permanent. This is one of those moments. The question now is not whether the world will change. It already has. The real question is, who will adapt without destroying themselves in the process? And that answer is still being written. To understand what is unfolding, you have to stop thinking in terms of events and start thinking in terms of cycles. Systems do not collapse because of a single action. They collapse when pressures accumulate to a point where adaptation becomes unavoidable. That is where we are now. For decades, the global system benefited from a rare alignment. Economic growth, technological leadership, military dominance, and institutional legitimacy were all moving in the same direction. That alignment created stability. It also created complacency. Complacency is always punished by history. When a dominant power assumes permanence, it builds structures optimized for continuation, not for change. Those structures work brilliantly until they don't. And when they fail quickly. The hypersonic demonstration did not introduce a new problem. It exposed an old one. The assumption that deterrence could be guaranteed through spending and scale alone is no longer valid. Deterrence now depends on adaptability, speed, and strategic coherence. This has profound implications. Military credibility is inseparable from economic credibility. You cannot ask the world to trust your currency, your debt, or your guarantees if the mechanisms that protect them are increasingly questioned. Confidence is a single ecosystem. When one part erodes, the rest follows. The United States still issues the world's reserve currency, but reserve status is not a law of nature. It is a function of trust, enforcement, and perceived stability. History is full of dominant currencies that lost that status once the underlying system shifted. We have seen this before. The Dutch guilder, the British pound, each declined not because of a single catastrophe, but because the world slowly adjusted to a new center of gravity. What makes this moment different is speed. Technology compresses time. Information moves faster. Capital moves faster. Reactions are amplified. This means transitions that once took decades now unfold in years, and that compression increases risk. As uncertainty rises, decision makers shorten their time horizons. Shorter horizons lead to defensive behavior. Defensive behavior reduces cooperation. Reduced cooperation increases fragmentation. Fragmentation lowers efficiency and growth. This is the feedback loop we are entering. Energy sits at the center of it, always has. Energy determines industrial capacity, military readiness, and social stability. When energy flows are politicized, prices become volatile and planning becomes fragile. That fragility feeds directly into inflation. Inflation is not just a monetary phenomenon. It is a signal that systems are out of balance. When supply chains are disrupted, when energy costs rise, when governments borrow to soften the impact, inflation becomes persistent. Persistent inflation erodes purchasing power. Eroded purchasing power undermines social cohesion. Undermined cohesion destabilizes politics. This is not theory, it is pattern recognition. Now consider the internal dynamics of major powers. The United States faces a paradox. Its global role requires long-term commitment and sacrifice, but its political system rewards short-term outcomes. This mismatch creates instability. Strategic consistency becomes difficult when priorities shift every few years. Russia, by contrast, operates with a narrower set of objectives. This does not make it superior. It makes it more focused. Focus matters in periods of transition. This difference in structure shapes behavior. It also shapes perception, and perception drives alignment. Countries do not choose sides based on ideology alone. They choose based on predictability and self-interest. When the existing order appears less predictable, alternatives become more attractive, even if they are imperfect. This is the quiet rebalancing underway. Not a sudden alliance shift, but a gradual diversification of dependence. Trade here, payments there, energy contracts elsewhere. Each decision seems minor. Together they alter the system, and systems respond. Financial markets are already adjusting. Volatility is no longer episodic. It is structural. Correlations that once provided stability are breaking down. Risk models built for a different era are struggling to keep up. This environment rewards those who understand history. History does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes often enough to be useful. Major transitions share common features: rising debt, declining trust, internal division, external pressure, and technological disruption. We are experiencing all five simultaneously. That convergence is rare and dangerous. Another misconception worth addressing is the idea that technological superiority alone determines outcomes. Technology matters, but it must be embedded in a coherent strategy. Tools without strategy create false confidence. We have seen this mistake repeatedly. Large investments in complex systems that look impressive but fail under real conditions. Meanwhile, simpler, more focused solutions deliver outsized impact. Efficiency beats spectacle. Adaptation beats scale. This principle applies far beyond the military. Economic systems optimize for short-term returns often underinvest in resilience. Financial engineering replaces productive investment. Over time, the gap between financial markets and real economies widens. When that gap becomes visible, trust erodes. This erosion does not announce itself. It shows up as skepticism, as hedging behavior, as reduced willingness to accept official narratives at face value. Trust, once lost, is extremely difficult to rebuild. This is why messaging matters less than action at this stage. Declarations of strength are less persuasive than demonstrations of capability. Markets and nations are watching behavior, not speeches. And behavior is changing. Supply chains are being shortened. Strategic stockpiles are being rebuilt. Defense budgets are rising. Energy policies are shifting. These are not random moves. They are adaptations to a new environment. Adaptation always carries costs. Higher costs mean lower growth. Lower growth means harder choices. Harder choices increase political tension. Political tension reduces room for compromise. This is the cycle tightening. Now consider the civilizational dimension. Every global order reflects a set of values, incentives, and assumptions. The post-Cold War order emphasized openness, efficiency, and integration. It delivered growth. It also created vulnerabilities. As the environment changes, so do the values that matter. Security begins to outweigh efficiency. Resilience outweighs optimization. Control outweighs openness. This shift is not ideological. It is practical. Societies adjust their priorities based on perceived threats. When threats feel distant, openness flourishes. When threats feel immediate, control returns. We are firmly in the latter phase. This does not mean cooperation disappears. It becomes conditional, transactional, fragile, and fragility increases the likelihood of miscalculation. Misunderstandings multiply in fragmented systems. Signals are misread. Intentions are questioned. Small actions are interpreted as major threats. History shows that this is when accidents happen. Not because leaders want conflict, but because systems lack buffers. Buffers absorb shocks. When buffers are gone, shocks propagate. That is why this period requires discipline. For policymakers, discipline means resisting the temptation to overreact. For investors, it means questioning assumptions. For individuals, it means avoiding extremes of fear and complacency. The worst decisions are made when people assume certainty where none exists. Certainty is a luxury of stable eras. We are not in one. What we are witnessing now will shape the next decade, not through a single dramatic event, but through cumulative adjustments. Some will be successful, others will fail. Failure in this context does not mean collapse. It means loss of influence, reduced options, constrained choices. Those outcomes matter. This is why the Oreshnik moment resonates beyond its immediate context. It symbolizes a broader shift from assumed dominance to contested power. Once power is contested, everything changes. Negotiations become harder. Guarantees become conditional. Costs rise. Planning horizons shorten. This environment rewards realism. Realism does not mean pessimism. It means aligning expectations with reality, recognizing constraints, accepting trade-offs. The old order promised win-win outcomes. The emerging order is more zero-sum. That does not make it better or worse. It makes it different, and difference requires adjustment. Those who cling to the belief that the previous system will reassert itself unchanged are likely to be disappointed. Systems rarely reverse course without first breaking something. We are in the breaking phase, not a collapse, but a reconfiguration. The outcome is not predetermined. Agency still matters. Decisions still matter, but they matter within tighter constraints. This is the environment leaders, markets, and societies must now navigate, understanding that reality is the first step. Ignoring it only increases the eventual cost. We are entering an era where efficiency gives way to resilience, where geopolitical decisions outweigh economic logic, where markets react not to data, but to power. And there is no return to the previous world, not to guaranteed security, not to unquestioned dominance, not to the illusion of permanent stability. The Oreshnik moment did not start this transition. It revealed it. What comes next will not be defined by a single war or treaty. It will be defined by adaptation, by who understands that cycles have turned and systems must adjust. History shows this clearly. Every major order ends not with an announcement, but with a series of moments that force people to rethink what they believed was permanent. This is one of those moments. The question now is not whether the world will change. It already has. The real question is who will adapt without destroying themselves in the process. And that answer is still being written.